This is Susan Bradley for AskWoody.com, and this is Task for the Weekend, October 16th, 2021. Well, we're halfway through the month. We are just finishing up the patching week, and of course everyone is still in test mode and not installing patches at this time, correct? So tonight I'm going to talk about what does your computer or network look like to others. Now, big businesses can do what they call penetration testing, and that's where they hire a firm to see if they can break into the system. And they do it in multiple different ways. They'll try phishing attempts, they'll try hacking in from outside, and they'll look to see what devices are exposed. And one of the things they do is in this pen testing is to see if they can break in, see if there's an open port, and if there's a vulnerability in that open port. And it always reminds me that what can we, as home users or small users, do likewise, because we can't afford, obviously, a big pen testing firm. So what options do we have? And there's a couple of tools that you can use. One of them, especially for home users, is something called Shieldsup. And it gives a quick and dirty scan of the ports, about the 1,024 ports in the system. Now keep in mind, your computer system has over 64,000 ports that your computer then can talk to something else on that port. So for example, if you're going to a website, if you're going to the AskWoody.com website, we're talking to you over port 443. That's the SSL port. Because you're making an SSL connection to our web server, you're talking over that port. If you're talking to mail servers, that's traditionally port 25. That's changing a lot these days with more secure email. But for many years, that port was port 25. If you do file transfer protocol, that's port 21. And there's a lot of other agreed upon protocols that use certain ports, but that's kind of the major one. So you can use Shieldsup to test to see what your computer has open and what somebody outside of your firewall can look to see on your system. And what I mean by that is it doesn't look specifically at your computer, it's looking at the outside edge of your network. So it's looking at your firewall, your router, your internet service provider's device, whatever that thing is on the edge, it's looking at that. So for example, here I am at the site, and you've got some choices here. Now, these days we tend not to open up to the external world file sharing ports. We also don't do it as much as we used to. So you can start here on all service ports, and you scroll down, and it does about 1,000 ports on this initial scan, and it lets you know whether or not something can see that you've got something listening on a system. Green means you're in stealth mode, meaning that somebody outside of your network can't see that you've got anything running on that system. And you can see it's building up that view. So now I've done the most common internet ports on the scan, and it's letting me know that most or all of my ports, the major ones down here, are still in stealth mode. Now, it didn't like the fact that my device responded to a ping. But again, the very, very outside edge of my device is a Comcast ISP router, and they specifically do set it up to allow for that, so I can't control that. And I honestly don't consider that to be a failure these days. So again, I don't see that as a problem. I'm more interested in making sure that ports like 443, 139, all of these ones down here are in stealth or closed mode. Now, if you're a business or a small business, and especially if you run your own mail server, you will probably have port 25 open, and that's okay. Again, it just depends on what you're doing in your environment. If you did a port scan on Ask Woody, you'd get port 443 open. Again, that's okay. We want you to come to our website. If you're looking for other scanning tools out there, here's some other options as well. Qualisys has something called a Community Edition. It's a free scanner. It does a limited testing. What Is My IP also has a port scanner. And there's also some options out on the Pen Test Tools site. I'll show you the example on What Is My IP. So here's another scanning tool that is whatismyip.com. And you can check again common server ports, especially for home users, game ports. If you want to make sure that there are no peer-to-peer port tests, you can make sure that that's closed. And if you want to check a single port, you can check that down there as well. You get the idea that there's lots of tools out here to see what other people are looking at from your outside of your network. So I hope that gave you kind of an overview of what you can see at Shieldsup.com and kind of take a look at what other people, what attackers are looking at from the outside of your network. Have a great week. As always, the newsletter comes out tomorrow. We're still at MS DEF CON 2. When we clear up and go to DEF CON 4, if you haven't already installed 2.1H1, I'll want you to install that. We haven't heard yet when 2.1H2 for Windows 10 is coming out. Windows 11 is out and getting patches and fixes, but that's okay. We don't care about that yet because it needs to settle down and become a lot more stable before any of us care about, and not to mention most of us don't have hardware to run it. Until next time, this is Susan Bradley for AskWoody.com.